doing it now. Go.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Hurff, and I'd like to share with you my reflections from our services marketing class with Professor Baldonia this spring. I think you'll enjoy what I've learned and look forward to sharing it with you. Okay, first what I'd like to start with is a little backdrop into what I call the cues of services marketing. These were some real foundational learnings for me that make services unique compared to, say, goods. And those three things I want to mention here at the beginning before I get into my reflections are, first, how the characteristics of services are very different from goods. In fact, one area, intangibles, right? Some services you can't see or feel or touch, but it's there. Something like your health at the health club. How can you see that? So we'll learn how to deal with that. The second area is just the expansion of the marketing mix from the 4 P's of product, price, place, and promotion to now include people, processes, and the physical evidence. Again, another learning. And last, just the criticality of the roles and responsibilities that both the service provider has, but additionally what the customer needs to do in order for the service to be delivered properly and of high quality. So this is another element that's important. Okay, what I'd like to do is share with you through some of the work we did this semester, some of the key concepts, tools, and frameworks that I felt are personally very important for this class. Okay, so I'll touch on the GAPS model, and then I'll go into a couple service, marketing, and other aspects. And with that, I'll show an array of tools that are listed here on the chart. Let's first start with the way the entire course was framed out through the GAPS model framework. Here I have a picture to illustrate it. Obviously, the customer gap is what we're trying to close. That's the difference between the expected service and what the customer perceives was the service delivered. So we have 4 key provider gaps that are critical to close or to eliminate in design such that we're able to close this customer gap. And the particular examples I show today will be gap 2, gap 3, and gap 4. So first of all, when we talk about service innovation and design, gap 2, I'm going to show you how we can use the development model, and also I'm proposing that we use the ServQual audit survey at this step as a great diagnostic tool as you develop a new service. This chart illustrates the key steps. I believe there's 9 key steps here in creating a service and ultimately delivering a service. And along the way, there's several stage gates noted by the stop signs to the right that are critical to check along the way. And when I say check, that means you want to test, you want to prototype, you want to have your employees involved, you want to have the entire organization involved, and you want to talk to customers. So this is critical in eliminating gaps even before you launch your service. I found this to be quite helpful. The other tool that I really got a lot of value of was the service blueprinting tool. This is where you connect the dots between the customer's experience and what you're trying to deliver. It takes into account all the interactions, both on stage at the customer at the front line, as well as backstage, even with the service processes. And what you do is you literally map it out. It's like in finance, following the dollars. Here we're following the customer. What do they see when they pull up to, say, a restaurant? What are their perceptions? How are they treated when they greet the hostess? How long does it take for them to get their drinks, to make an order, to eat their dinner, get their bill, get their check, get out? And then how's the restaurant do in turning the tables? So all these are critical elements that we can map out and identify where we can improve. What I'm proposing is that the ServQual diagnostic not only is good for auditing an established service, but it can be used as a tool to identify defects during the prototyping and during the design phase that I showed earlier. So again, here there's several characteristics that go to measure really the 5 key dimensions of service quality: reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy, and tangibles, all in the fervor of closing that almighty customer gap. Let's go on to a second area I'd like to talk about, and that's managing demand and capacity. And here, this gap 3, is critical because services are perishable. You can't inventory them, okay? So that's an underlying issue with a service. There's also several strategies we can use to match capacity and demand, and then I want to talk about the yield management tool, and I'm going to show you some examples. Here I've highlighted the particular area in red outline on the GAPS model that we're talking about right now. Well, you can see by the guy in the lower left-hand corner, he's perplexed. What's he going to do? He's got customers waiting to get in and no tables to seat them. He's got people wanting to get on the flight but no seats left. Or worse, the plane's empty, the restaurant's empty. How do you match supply and demand? What are those things we can do regarding the constraints of time, labor, equipment, and the facilities to balance all this out? We want to get to the sweet spot of meeting demand with the capacity we have. In the text, we had several different examples of how to do this, how to match capacity and demand, whether it was by shifting demand or shifting the capacity, or even in situations where it just wouldn't match up. What do we do? I made this chart to kind of put it all in one place, and I found this to be effective as you try to ascertain what the issue is and what solution you might employ to match capacity and design. I'm not going to go into the detail, you can do that offline, but I found this would be a very comprehensive way to look at matching capacity and demand based on the learnings in our book. Then, as far as yield management goes, what's the actual use, the actual number of seats filled versus the total available? And here we had an example at the Pegasus Beach Resort Hotel, I think it was in Barbados, where there was a cricket tournament coming, and we were going to host the board, the West Indies cricket board, I believe. And what these charts show is some of the things. First, in the upper right, you see the seasonality of the hotel, the past 2 years, right? Slow periods, high periods, and what that meant to the revenue during those periods and the number of rooms used. And then we see in the lower left this opportunity for the cricket board where this was worth almost $50,000 once we netted out some of the additional cost because they needed some special services that cost us versus just selling the room. So RevPAR alone wasn't enough. But then in the lower right we see how we're able to maximize the RevPAR, we are able to maximize occupancy by accepting this deal. Again, a really good example of how to employ yield management. There's certainly challenges and risks. One of the key challenges is overbooking. And as you can see here, the 2 people on the wing, they found the answer to overbooking. And then if you look at the cartoon in the bottom, guess who's flying the plane? The 2 people that needed an extra 2 seats. So of course we don't want to have to resort to these solutions, but it's just to emphasize overbooking is a key challenge and risk along with employee morale. Just think, you don't have any more seats. What do the employees feel? That's not going to feel very good when you're in a service business and you want to help customers. Let's move on to the last subject material, integrated marketing service communications. And notice service is in there. This is beyond just the integrated marketing communications. It's about integrated marketing communications in service. Here at the bottom you see the services triangle, and what's critical here is to integrate communications throughout, both externally with your customer, both internally, both vertically and horizontally across functions where operations will be prepared based on the demand you forecast, and that this is all in the vein of making sure at the end of the day we deliver against our promise to the customer. The customer sees us in advertising on the web, they hear from our employees, we want to make sure that everything matches up. This is gap 4. So what are some of the strategies? So what I've done is I've used a work example, and I'll explain it in a minute, and I've used the framework here shown on the right, which is this framework here of approaches to overcome service communication channels. So we'll kind of step through this. The example I'm using is illustrated at the bottom. we make an ingredient, okay? Well, how does this relate to a service? Well, our customer, called ClimaLife, they convert that into a product, but they actually sell a service where our product's included in the service. So we're going to talk about how together we're working with ClimaLife to grow their service business and to consume our ingredient. Okay, so the first thing in a service is how do you address the intangibility aspect? In this case, we're claiming that our product enables their fluid service to be lower cost over the lifetime of the service. Well, what can we do to show that? Well, we've got three things here we can do. We can use advertising, as shown in the lower right. We've put this out both in trade magazines as well as in websites, as well as in direct mail. We can use testimonials. Here there's a testimonial in Budapest where there was a successful installation. You can see here solar panels on the roof of this apartment complex, and our fluids inside, and ClimaLife manages this whole system for this apartment complex. Or we can show some real nuts and bolts type pictures here. And I think it's easy to see that the middle fluid is fairly clean. It's a nice light amber look, which it should, versus the competitive products on either side, which after a very short time in use have charred, and they really have lost their effectiveness. So this is one way we can address intangibility. The second area is managing service promises. Well, how do we do that? This is where we have to make sure that what we're telling the customer matches up with what we're delivering. This is about training the salespeople and working with operations. So there's horizontal and cross-functional coordination here. Also doing things like press releases where we make our promises, or advertisements or presentations to the customer. The next area is managing customer expectations. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So in a way, we want to promise not quite as much as we're going to deliver, right on the cusp, so the customer's delighted. That's what I like to do. And so how can we do this? Well, this is one area, is through the website. We provide a very good description of what the service delivers and what the customer can expect. So we're trying to train the customer in advance here about what to expect from the service delivery. Then there's just in general educating the customer, and that can get very technical in this heat transfer fluid area for solar thermal applications. We've got quarterly brochures that go out to the customers from ClimaLife to their customers. Here it's talking about another testimonial, and then we have FAQs that help the customers understand common questions they may have and what are those answers. And the FAQs are available through the web as well as through a booklet they can order. Then we have the internal marketing communication program. And this, I have to tell you, is by using this framework, I uncovered a gap here in our current program. And that is, we really haven't educated our internal employees, either at ClimaLife or even on my team, beyond the sales team for both companies. So we need to expand that. And so this was a good learning and a good reason why we apply these tools. We did a great job training their sales team. They're ready to go sell. But nobody else is ready. So we need to educate the teams on both at the customer and in my shop as well. So that wraps it up. I thought you'd enjoy it. I'd like to thank you, Professor Beldogna, for a great class. I learned a lot. I must say the quizzes were tough. I got more wrong on your quizzes than the rest of all the MBA program added up as far as quizzes go, but I learned a lot. So thank you, and I feel much better equipped to address services in the current business I'm in, because 80% of the U.S. is about service. That's a trend globally, and so learning more about how to make services better and closing that customer gap will be critical to delivery. Thank you.